Lori Daybell married her husband Chad on November 5th, 2019. It was a small ceremony celebrated in Hawaii. Chad and Lori met at a conference in October of 2018 where Chad was talking about his visions for the end of the world. Chad's prior wife, Tammy, died at home 2 weeks before he married Lori. Lori's prior husband, Charles, was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex, 4 months before she married Chad. Lori's children, Tylee and JJ, disappeared about 2 months before Chad and Lori's wedding. This is the bizarre timeline of the Doomsday couple, Chad and Lori Daybell. Lori has already been convicted for her role in the murders of her children and Chad's first wife. She is now in Arizona awaiting a trial for the murder of her fourth husband, Charles. Meanwhile, Chad is on trial facing triple murder charges and the death penalty. Tonight, we will listen to Chad as he speaks with his daughter from the back seat of a police cruiser as investigators dig up his backyard and find the remains of Lori's children. And we'll have all the latest from court with a live report as we investigate the strange world of the Doomsday couple, Chad and Lori Daybell. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. A big, dramatic day inside the courtroom in the Doomsday Prophet death penalty triple murder trial. Let's begin, though, with one of those three victims in this case, or alleged victims, depending on, who you believe here, as we watch the evidence. Tammy Daybell. This is a woman who just suddenly died. Suddenly died. Not old. Now, I think there'll be some discrepancy about the state of her health, but my understanding is she's training for like a marathon, and she just died. Like, I don't understand how that, like, you go to bed and then someone just dies. That's not normal. The first thing you would think in a situation like that is maybe a brain aneurysm, something like that. Maybe a heart attack while you're sleeping. She's training for a marathon, though. And you would think there'd be something leading up to it, something leading up to her suddenly dying. But when someone suddenly dies, that becomes suspicious, or at least curious as to what happened. Yet there was very little curiosity from Chad Daybell. That's because after his wife suddenly died, he suddenly got married again to Lori. So there wasn't a lot of like, oh, what happened? What happened to Tammy? Some of those questions that many people have when a loved one passes away suddenly. Like what happened to, Uncle whoever or Aunt whoever, like what happened? That curiosity just wasn't there. And we've heard he knew. He always knew she was going to die before she was 50. My question is, did Tammy know? Right? If you're the prophet and you know that your life's going to have 2 segments, and you know the second segment's without her, you're going to let her know? Did they talk about it? You think maybe if she knew she was going to die before 50, maybe she would go to a doctor? I don't know. So when your wife suddenly dies, then you suddenly marry someone else. Anyone who's watched court TV through the years, red flags are all over the place, right? But the question I really had is, what did the kids think? Because Chad Daybell and Tammy, they raised a family. And these are adult children, not like little ones who, don't necessarily have questions or don't understand the world, don't understand life and death necessarily. These are adult children. So what did they think? I think that's important in looking at this case. I think it'll be important for the jury to hear from the kids. And tonight we're going to hear from one of them. Because the day he's getting arrested, Chad Daybell, he talks to his daughter. And the camera's rolling. The microphone's on. We'll see it. We'll hear it. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Trust me. A lot of interesting things happening today inside that courtroom in Boise, Idaho. Let's take a look at some of the biggest moments from today.
I want to call your attention to June 9th of 2020. At that time was Lori Vallow Daybell, an inmate at the Madison County Jail.
Yes.
Detective, do you recognize State's Exhibit 33?
Yes.
What is it?
This is a thumb drive with a call on it.
All right, and who are the parties to that call?
Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell.
Hi, babe.
Hello?
Are you okay?
No, they're searching the property.
The house right now?
Yeah. I'm at Emma's. Mark means I'll be talking to you.
Okay. Well, are they in the house?
No, they're out on the property.
Are they seizing stuff? Again?
They're searching. There's a search warrant, and so.
Should I try to call you later?
I don't know. I don't know. You can try, yeah. I'll answer if I can.
Okay.
I love you, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, baby. I love you.
Okay. Love you. Good night.
So when we arrived, I helped maintain traffic as they were in the process of closing the road down in front of the house because multiple vehicles were going to be showing up. So I helped maintain some traffic control at the beginning. And then I stood by as detectives went and served that warrant to the occupants inside the home. And then my role was to just stand by and observe the occupants and their coming and goings. I remember there were multiple times that I could, because I was trying to keep eyes on him as well as the west side, the front part of the house. And there were multiple times I kind of saw him awkwardly looking over his right shoulder towards that east or that northeast corner of the property where the pond area was. And that's that time where some of the investigators and cadaver dogs were working. I, again, was occasionally looking over to see if he was leaving or was needing anything and coming back to ask questions. And so I would look over there, and one of the times I did, I was talking to another detective, and he came out of the home and appeared to be in a hurry. He went directly from the home to his car, had some items in his hand, and then left the property. And I remember at that time that there were assigned detectives responsible for following him if he went certain places and just kind of keeping an eye on him. Chad's leaving, and about that time, other investigators that were in the back of the property came jogging over saying, "Hurry and go stop him."
You said he was, in your opinion, going fast, is that right?
Correct.
How far away from the home approximately was he before he was stopped?
It was right around the Fremont-Madison County line where he stopped.
Is there anything that you're going to need in there? Well, she'll be running my finances, I suppose. If you go to Telmate, this is the card that's used. So, yeah, she'll need to still have commissary money. Usually puts 30 a week in there. So. And you can probably talk to her, too.
Detective Wheeler, I just want to reiterate, we just heard that comment about he's not likely going to be out. At that point in time, you had not formally put him under arrest, is that right?
Aside from placing him in handcuffs and detaining him, no.
He was under surveillance. Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft joining us live tonight outside the courthouse in Boise, Idaho. Kelly, great to see you. This was a big day, and we're seeing stuff that we hadn't seen before. Let's start first and talk about surveillance. And there was testimony that Lori and Chad were under surveillance.
They sure were, Vinny. Good evening to you. So this was when Lieutenant Powell, he was on the stand. And what he really talked about was how he was contacted by other law enforcement officials, and they were asking for some help. They first started asking questions about Tammy and wanting to talk about getting her body exhumed. And then they also asked Lieutenant Powell for some help in locating a Jeep. Let's listen to him testify about that.
They asked if we could help locate a 2018 gray Jeep Wrangler with Texas plates.
Did you get any information as to why you were seeking to locate that?
They believed that it was in Fremont County.
Did they tell you why they wanted to find the Jeep?
It was involved in an attempted shooting.
Did they give any names in terms of that were in connection with that shooting?
Yes, Alex Cox, Lori Vallow, and they believe they had ties to Chad Daybell.
And so, Vinny, authorities began watching Lori and Chad. They watched them as they went to Hobby Lobby, and they were holding hands. They watched them as they went to another restaurant called Cafe Rio, and they were sitting there having lunch. Now, on cross-examination, defense counsel John Pryor, he was asking Lieutenant Powell, saying to him, there's really nothing suspicious about two people going to Hobby Lobby and two people sitting down and having lunch together. And he said no. But when you put everything together, this was soon thereafter that his wife that they found and then exhumed her body, had died. So when we're talking about 9 days after your wife died, then obviously, as you had just said, Vinny, some red flags start to wave.
Yeah. Big red flags, like huge red flags. You know, it's the oldest trick in the book. Oh, my wife tragically died. Oh, wow, I've got another one just standing by. Amazing how that works out. All right, let's talk about Tammy, because when she first passed away, there was no investigation, there was nothing. She was buried, but her body was exhumed. What did they say about Tammy's body being exhumed today?
And you know, Vinny, her children had even said, they've said this in prior interviews before, that it was at first their wish not to have an autopsy performed because they believed that she did die from natural causes. But when Lieutenant Powell, he was on the stand and he talked about being contacted by authorities, raising some red flags as to what really did happen there, if she did die of natural causes. So he talked about that and talked about why they exhumed her body. And he was saying it did appear that Tammy was healthy. As you mentioned, she was training to run a marathon. Let's listen to some of his testimony regarding that.
He was being seen for depression.
Anything else?
No.
What did that do to, how did that impact your decision how to go further to investigate in any way?
Yes.
In what way did it impact?
She appeared to be healthy, so I got with the prosecutors and got a warrant for exhumation.
Now, we weren't able to show the viewers, they didn't allow it to be played when she was being exhumed, but for people inside the courtroom and the jurors, they were able to watch some of that video. And this was just 2 months after Tammy had died. And so from those of the people that were in the courtroom, she didn't exactly look much different than what she had looked during that, when she first had died, Vinny. And so not really a lot of gasps or anything like that inside the courtroom when this video was being played for the jurors. They showed that there had been a blanket that was placed upon her, and then when she came out, they showed the green sweater. It had some gold embellishments on it. So these were some of the things that the jury could watch and see. But really just talking about the investigation and how they decided to exhume her body, and talking about things like she was depressed. But again, there were some suspicious circumstances, so that's why they exhumed her body.
Absolutely. And thank goodness they did. Thank goodness. Now, today you also spoke with JJ's grandpa.
We did, Larry Woodcock. And so what he is going to do now, they are going to be having a memorial service for JJ and Tylee. This is April 27th. So he wanted to talk to us about it and say that even though they've had the remains of JJ for some time, they felt now was the time to have a memorial service. So April 27th in Idaho Falls, and he said the public is invited. He said they have just received an outpouring of support from the public, and they wanted to have a public memorial service to honor them. Let's listen to what he had to say.
This trial is winding down. It's coming to an end. The folks and our friends and our family here in Idaho have given us so much. They have taken us in. They treat us like family. They treat us like we're town folk. They treat us like we're part of the county. And it's really time for us to give them the opportunity to be the part of this.
And again, Larry said that he hopes a lot of people from the public end up coming out to pay their respects to JJ and Tylee. And again, saying now is the time to have this as this trial is going on. So that's going to be April 27th in Idaho Falls.
Kelly Craft in Boise in the middle of it all. Thanks so much, Kelly. We'll speak again, I'm sure, tomorrow. Joining me right now, retired police commander, religious cult expert, and host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. Also the author of the book Deceived. Great to see you, Mike. Thanks so much. Are you surprised what we're learning now about this additional surveillance, this early surveillance on Chad and Lori? Like they were on the radar already for the shooting related to, I believe, Brandon Boudreaux.
Yes, and I think it's interesting because it gives you some insight into what law enforcement does in these kinds of investigations. They want to try to watch and hope that they catch someone doing something, and they did, we know, because we see now the images of the Hobby Lobby and some other things that later can be used to impeach someone's testimony that, hey, we didn't know each other or we just got to know each other just recently. And so it's not uncommon at all to see that surveillance goes on for some time. Think about the Long Island serial killer and Rex Heuermann and the amount of surveillance that went on for nearly a year, Vinny. I think this is pretty standard, especially when you're focusing in on suspects that you hope might leave some digital forensic evidence or other pieces of evidence that you can use in the investigation.
Yeah, I think the other picture it paints for this jury is, these two are together, and they're and that's you just got to keep this link together, right? That the two are the same. One isn't necessarily leading the other. They're in it together. The other thing was the surveillance at the moment, right, where they're digging up his backyard. Now, he's not under arrest for anything, but they're digging up the yard, and it seemed from the way he was speaking with everyone, he knew that he wasn't going to be released. He knew he wasn't getting out, right? He's telling his family all the information in the world because he knows what's in his backyard.
Boy, you're not a kidding. And again, it gives us insight into what law enforcement has to worry about. Not only are they keeping surveillance on him because they don't want him to jackrabbit and not be able to grab him, but also you got to do it from a safety standpoint when you're doing a search warrant like that. You got to protect the assets and the people that you've got there. You got to protect the crime scene. And most importantly, you got to maintain control of the people involved, and in this case, a suspect that they clearly were focusing on. But I'm like you. The moment he's in the car telling his daughter his bank account passwords, and he's saying you're in charge, and our other attorney's going to be calling and reaching out, it gives you this really strong indication, because it's not the things that are being said as much as what's not being said in that conversation. And what's not being said is, hey, I know what's being dug up in my backyard, and I don't think I'm getting out of jail right away.
And the other part that has become it was clear after the last trial, but even more clear now, is this is all happening in very small communities, right? Stories like this don't happen every day in Fremont County, population 13,000, for goodness sake. It's tiny, yet law enforcement here was on top of it, making the right calls, coordinating everything. This could have been a very difficult case, very difficult, but because of, they seem to be on top of every movement as it was happening here.
It makes me think back to when we were running the task force looking at all the cold case homicides in Utah. I remember sitting down with a Chicago cop one day and saying, I love the experience you have of all of the homicides that you look at and the ability you have to look at tons of different criminal cases. And his response to me was, I wish I was in a community like yours where I could actually work a criminal case. And so, yeah, we got to take into account these cops are professional. They're as professional as anywhere else on the globe. Sometimes they make inexperienced mistakes, but they have time to really work a case. And thankfully, this PD brought in the state and the county and the feds to help them and backfill where they had incapacities.
Yeah, and to agree to communicate, and you know, when they work together, it's a better case. I just remember in the 70s, it was always like when the feds come in, the local cops get all mad, they don't get big-footed, but that did not happen here. All right, Mike King is going to join us a little bit later in the program. Thanks, Mike. When we come back, we're going to talk about the relationship, spousal murder, or the accusation of spousal murder, and how the children react, because we're going to hear his children react on video at the moment he's in the back of the police cruiser, plus coming up next hour. In Oakland County, Michigan, James Crumbly has been convicted of 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter for the murders committed by his son, the Oxford school shooter. He's been sentenced to 10 to 15 years. Tonight, we'll hear the threatening jailhouse phone calls that were used against him at sentencing.
Out of here, I am on a rampage, Karen. Yes, Karen McDonald, if your ass is going down, then you better be here.
We are underway in the trial of Doomsday prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators have recovered human remains at Chad Daybell's residence.
There's no way, Morgan, I can never come up with this.
His wife, Lori Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's just so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the Doomsday prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
That's what they told me, that they found human remains. And I said, well, there are several dogs that have been buried there. And he said, respectfully, Emma, I can tell the difference. It's human remains. And I asked, where was it? And he said, over by the pond under that tree, that it was in the ground and had boards over it.
Okay.
But that didn't, Jason and I have walked all over there.
Yeah.
That, and I can see in your face that surprised you.
We haven't seen this before. That is Chad Daybell's daughter, Emma, grown children. And you can hear in this first conversation, they're literally digging up human remains in their backyard, and she is supporting her father, doesn't believe he's involved in any of this. And to this day, I believe the children are supporting their father. He's accused of murdering their mother. It's not unusual. Seen it many times here on Court TV through the years. There's a case out in Colorado right now. No pending charges, but Barry Morphew was charged with his wife's murder on Mother's Day There are his two grown daughters who are 1,000% supporting him. Absolutely supporting him. Despite the evidence that the prosecution believed that they had, there were some problems in that case. They had to drop the charges. We'll see what happens there. How about Buster Murdaugh? Buster Murdaugh was in court every day, testified for his father. You know what the evidence is in that case. You heard it, and he's there for his father, another grown child supporting the surviving spouse in a spousal murder case. The one that always comes to my mind years ago, one of the first cases I covered on Court TV, Dr. Dirk Greinader up in Dedham, Massachusetts, the same courthouse where the Karen Reed case is. 3 adult children in the courtroom throughout, believing in their father. 2 of them, Yale doctors. I mean, these children, super bright. The DNA of Dirk Greinader on the bloody glove found in the sewer near the crime scene. Yet despite the DNA evidence, to this day, they do not believe that their father murdered their mother, even though he was the last one known to be with her. Wow. Let me bring in my guest to talk about all this. Joining me in San Antonio, Texas, Lori Vallow Daybell's cousin, author of the book, I Walked Through the Fire to Get Here. Megan Connor is with us. Also with us, religious author of the books, The Church of the Firstborn and Tides of Transmutation, and an acquaintance of Chad Daybell, Eric Smith is with us. And finally, in St. Louis, Missouri, licensed mental health clinician specializing in trauma and abuse and neglect, Sharonda Brown is with us as well. Great to have everyone here. Megan, you also have a podcast. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called The Midlife Revolution.
The Midlife Revolution. Thank you so much. Sharonda, I want to ask you first. I went through a bunch of cases here at Court TV. I've been covering spousal murder cases, and I would say 19 times out of 20, those adult children will support the accused, regardless of the evidence. Why is that?
Because parents are superheroes through a child's eyes, and there is a lot of grief that children go through that says, if I accept what has happened, it's going to make my grief more intense. So I need to identify with the parent that I have left, or with that part of me that is still there, and they will connect to that, and they will believe only the good, because it helps them survive and go through a great deal of grief in a healthier way for them, although it's not. But to them it is, and that's how they keep their sanity throughout the process. But that parent will always be a superhero. You have to think roles and titles are a big form of manipulation for a lot of people, and parent is one of those top roles.
I want to play a little more of the interaction between Chad Daybell and his adult daughter, Emma. Take a listen.
If you go to Tellmate, this is the card that's used.
Okay.
And so all you really do, you could probably just sign in as chad.daybell or start your own.
I have an account that I've been talking with Lori on.
Okay.
Whoa, whoa, Megan, Lori, who married Chad, what was it, like a couple weeks after Tammy died, and the adult children communicating with Lori while she's in prison. Are you shocked by this? I am floored.
Unfortunately, I'm not shocked by it, because I know that the behavior of manipulators, as soon as they get into a new circle of people, they immediately start assessing who's a threat and who can be manipulated. And so they start exerting influence wherever they can. And it looks like Lori sort of adopted Emma and tried to get to be really likable to Emma. And I think Emma commented at one point that Lori was helping her with her grief.
Wow. I'm trying to put together the dynamics here. This is, and there's a photo of Emma from Facebook. I mean, is her mom. And all of a sudden, this woman is in her life, and she's communicating with her while she's in prison. I mean, she's in prison, accused of all of what we've seen, the murder of her own children. Wow. Well, I guess at that point, it's just for the children at that point. Let me take a listen to this now. More of this interaction between Emma and Chad, talking about how things are going to be going forward with Chad locked up.
Sorry, all the neighbors are going to be talking, but you just...
We're okay, Dad.
Well, hey.
We're okay. trusted us that we're independent now with your wallet.
Glad you got
We're
that.
not Colby.
All right, there's a few things there. I'll get to that "we're not Colby" in a moment. But Eric Smith, it was interesting. Chad Daybell, right out of the box, is talking about all the neighbors are going to be talking about this. I mean, that's putting it mildly, right? I mean, once you start digging up bodies in a backyard in Fremont County, Idaho, like everyone's going to be talking about it, not just the neighbors. It was an enormous story beforehand, and now it just was bigger than big, wasn't it?
Yeah, boy. Well, I mean, I'm not an immediate neighbor to them, but sure. Anytime somebody's digging or there's law enforcement on somebody's property nearby, yeah, all the neighbors are going to be paying attention for sure.
Megan, let me ask you about that last comment. We're not Colby. So Emma seems to be commenting about Lori's son, Colby. I wouldn't even think like there'd be this connection so quickly, and yet there was.
Yeah, that would have been a great way for Lori to, exert some influence over the Daybell children, would be to sort of distance herself from her oldest son, Colby, and make Colby seem like he was a taker and like she was sending money to him and supporting him, and he couldn't support himself. By bad-mouthing Colby, she ensured a deeper connection with Chad's children. And, manipulators will change their story depending on who the audience is. So I'm sure when she was in front of Colby, she was probably bad-mouthing Chad's children and vice versa.
Sharonda Brown, this sounds like classic Lori Daybell at this point, where she is, saying whatever she needs to say in the moment to get what she needs. And I guess at that point she needed to be accepted by the children of her new husband, who she married 10 days after his wife suddenly died.
Absolutely. The only way to betray someone is to get close to them and to be likable and to exude your charm and to make them believe that all of you is good, whatever that may be. So you want to make sure that you are doing things like being kind, being nice, sometimes playing the victim, putting yourself in a position to, be like, in the event that something comes up, the first thing people will say was, no way, that person wouldn't do that. That person's not like that. They were kind to me. They were nice to me. It is the easiest way to become the victim in a situation in which you are, in fact, the perpetrator. You have to be kind and you have to get close to the people that you are going to betray before you can actually betray them, because otherwise it's not betrayal.
Sharonda Brown, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Eric and Megan are going to stay with us. When we come back, we're going to track all these trips. It wasn't just one trip to Hawaii. Lori and Chad were going back and forth to Hawaii, and we know that's where Lori was ultimately arrested. We'll talk about that when we come back.
No, Your Honor, she is exercising her right to an extradition hearing.
And when are you requesting that we have this hearing?
Your Honor, I'd like to be heard on bail, and that will determine the answer. But the short answer is, if the court keeps bail as it is, we'd like it to be as Monday, as soon as possible. If the court is going to lower bail, then it can go further out, such that she can actually make it.
That was the first time we saw Lori Daybell inside of a courtroom. That was in Hawaii. I want to go through the Hawaiian timeline with you really quickly so you understand that it wasn't just one trip to Hawaii. October 19th, that's when Tammy Daybell was found dead in her home. Then you just flash forward, November 5th, 2019, Chad and Lori married in Hawaii. November 26th, police conduct a welfare check looking for little JJ because his grandparents haven't spoken with him. Then you flash forward November 27th, police determined that JJ is not with Melanie Gibb, who they had claimed she was with. So they go to search the house, and Lori and Chad are gone. December 1st, Lori and Chad fly on American Airlines to Hawaii. December 11th, Tammy's body is then exhumed. The next day, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, dies in Arizona. January 3rd, investigators searched Chad's home in Idaho. Then on the 25th, Kauai police served Lori with that notice that she must produce JJ and Tylee. That's right there, poolside. The next day, Nate Eaton from East Idaho News confronts Lori and Chad in that famous video. And then on the 30th, Lori misses the deadline to produce JJ and Tylee. And then finally, on February 20th, police in Kauai arrest Lori on a $5 million warrant. These are for desertion, non-supportive dependent children, and willful disobedience of the court process. That's a big date. March 5th, finally, she's extradited from Hawaii back to Rexburg on March 5th of 2020. So several trips down there, and she had been down there by herself without Chad before all that. Still with me, Lori Daybell's cousin, Megan Connor, and Chad Daybell's former colleague, Eric Smith, and religious cult expert, retired police commander Mike King. Eric, during all this time, when all of this was happening and you're more news is coming out and you're learning more about Chad Daybell, from your perspective, having known him, were you shocked? Were you surprised that he was off to Hawaii with Lori, that he had gotten remarried so quickly, that all of this was happening the way it was?
Yeah, shocked is a good word for it. When I first heard anything on, from Court TV or online in local news or whatever, I honestly thought something like this. They're trying to frame him. They're trying to set him up. I didn't believe it. I thought you guys were the wackos. And now, as the evidence is coming out, frankly, I mean, the writing's on the wall, isn't it? So yeah, it was shocking to say the least.
Yeah, but there's some truth to, we could be the wackos sometimes too, Eric. So that's a good dose of skepticism to carry with you. Mike King, the trips to Hawaii and tracking them down in Hawaii, the thing that always sticks with me is that they're supposed to be leading the 144,000. They're supposed to be part of this whole religious end of times group, cult, following, whatever you want to call it. And I thought I had heard him talk about Fremont County and that area being like the centerpiece for all of this to happen from his premonitions that he had. Yet he's down there, and not on the upper 48, but he's down there in Hawaii by the pool.
I'm with you, Vinny. I thought that was supposed to be ground zero for the reclaiming of this world when everything and that apocalyptic moment became known. But, the thing that today I was just shocked. You spoke about the 144,000. I was shocked when I saw that bank account today in Hawaii for $143,000-ish. And I wondered if that was the God that they were chasing.
Great point. Megan, what are your thoughts about Lori's connection to Hawaii? Because I think she was the one that was really connected to Hawaii.
Yeah, it was a big family connection. Janice and Barry were always vacationing in Hawaii any chance that they got. Lori's oldest sister, Stacy, eloped to Hawaii when she married Steve Cope. And ironically, the family was in Hawaii when Stacy passed away. They had an opportunity to come home and they didn't. So my idea was always that Hawaii was an escape for them. It was a place that they went anytime things were not going well. I think it was kind of a way for them to delude themselves that, they could be happy there.
Eric, this marriage is so quick and they're together so quick, and we're hearing some of the phone calls today. I love you. Was there ever any indication from your perspective when you knew Chad Daybell before all of this Hawaiian stuff happened that there was a woman in his life, another woman who had kind of seeped in there, that he was seeing this blonde hair, blue-eyed, woman that he met in Arizona?
Yes, but it wasn't a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. It was someone else.
Whoa.
So I did hear rumors about. Go ahead.
No, there was someone else. Please explain.
I can't give a lot of information. This came from another close friend between Chad and I, but it was clear that he was reaching out to more than one woman via text. I'm aware of one case where in one scenario, the husband became aware of this and got really upset and threatened him, said, just leave my wife alone, leave us alone, we're done with you, sort of thing. So I had heard about things like that from a distance before this, but I honestly didn't give them much credence. It was kind of surprising to me back then. So, but now, the cards are really stacking up. It's making a lot more sense to me.
Every time I see him in that dress shirt that's just a little too big, it's like a kid wearing his clothes to go to church on Sunday that, don't quite fit, that his brother handed down to him. But that's just me. Mike King, classic cult leader. Classic cult leader. It's about one thing, always with these cult leaders.
Yeah, power, dominion, and control. Actually, three things, and it's all about them. That is the hub of all attention, and we're seeing it happen over and again. And, as we just learned this little bit more of information, and whether it can be validated or not, we don't know. But it does remind us of one really important thing, Vinny, and that is the difference between those three personas that we all have. That public side where we saw Chad walking across the parking lot and trying to put on an air that he's okay and everything's right. Then you got the private side of our lives where we do things that maybe only the people really close to us get to see the warts that we've got. But then there's the secret side, and we're seeing the secret side come out in this court case now, and that's the stuff that's going to pile on higher and higher, and I believe really lead to a conviction in this case.
Yeah, once it ends up in court, it's no longer a secret. Thank you to everyone tonight. Megan Connor, Midlife Revolution podcast. Make sure you check it out. Eric Smith, great to see you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time. And Mike King, Profiling Evil as well. We'll see you all again really, really soon.